Rothschild, the family that bankrolled empires. Frankfurt, late 18th century. If you walk down certain streets of the city at dawn, the air smells of coal, smoke, and bread. But on one side of town, behind gates that lock at night, there is another smell. Damp walls, too many people, cooking fires stacked on top of each other. This is the Judengasse, the Jewish alley. Narrow, crowded, regulated. Here, in a small house with a sign of an eagle above the door, a young man sits at a low desk surrounded by coins. Roman coins, medieval coins, modern coins. Silver and copper and gold sorted into careful piles. He weighs them, studies the faces stamped on their surface, and thinks about the value they carry across centuries. His name is Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He's going to turn this cramped alley into the nerve center of a financial network that will eventually stretch from London to Vienna, Paris to Naples, funding wars and railways, kings and canals. But right now, he's just counting. Mayer is not born into grandeur. As a Jew in Frankfurt at this time, he cannot own land. He faces special taxes, restrictions on marriage, and limits on where he can live. The authorities close the gates to his street at night like a cage. What he does have is a set of skills. He's good with numbers. He knows how to win trust. And through his trade in rare coins and antiques, he gains a valuable connection. He becomes a supplier and eventually a banker to a local prince, Wilhelm of Hesse. He starts by buying and selling curiosities, then transitions into handling money for noble clients, storing their wealth, making loans, arranging transfers. He learns a simple, powerful truth. Information moves faster than armies. If you know before others which king is short on cash, which war is dragging on, which customs duty is about to change, you can arrange the right loan at the right time and take a slice for yourself. Mayer and his wife Gutle have many children. 5 sons in particular will become the backbone of something new. Instead of keeping them close, Mayer sends them out. Amschel stays in Frankfurt. Nathan goes to England. Salomon to Vienna, Karl to Naples, James to Paris. Imagine being one of those sons. You are in your 20s, stepping off a carriage in a foreign city, with letters of introduction in your pocket, a hat full of your father's advice, and instructions to build a branch of the family business from almost nothing. No Zoom calls, no email, no central server. Just careers, codes, and trust. Over time, these 5 branches become known by the cities they inhabit: London, Paris, Vienna, Naples, Frankfurt. The Rothschild develop a symbol for themselves: 5 arrows bound together, representing unity and strength in different directions. They are not a modern corporation, they are a family network. Here is where the real advantage appears. Most banks at the time operate locally. They know their town, maybe their region. Moving money from, say, London to Vienna is slow and risky. You ship gold by carriage. You pray it is not robbed. The Rothschilds do something different. They move information instead of metal. If a merchant in London wants to pay a supplier in Vienna, Nathan Rothschild in London can take cash there and have his brother Salomon in Vienna pay out the equivalent from local funds. The gold does not cross borders. The paper does. Behind these visible transactions is an invisible conversation of letters, often written in code, traveling by ship, coach, and courier. The family prides itself on speed. They use the best messengers, the fastest routes. Some accounts suggest carrier pigeons. Whatever the exact mix, the result is the same. They often know what is happening in European capitals before most governments do. In an era when days matter, that edge is priceless. During the Napoleonic Wars, chaos is good business for those who can stomach risk. Governments need money to move troops, feed soldiers, build ships. Tax systems are clumsy. Treasury departments are often a mess. The Rothschilds step in as middlemen, arranging loans, moving funds between alleys, buying and selling government bonds. One famous story, repeated in books and pamphlets for centuries, claims that Nathan Rothschild learned of Napoleon's defeat at Waterloo before anyone else in London, rushed to the stock exchange, pretended to be selling British bonds in a panic, and then secretly bought everything back cheap, making an enormous fortune when the market corrected. It is a dramatic story. It is also, according to most historians, exaggerated to the point of fiction. What is true is quieter and more interesting. The Rothschilds did indeed have very fast careers. They did trade in British government bonds and made a lot of money by being early and bold. But their power came not from one big trick, but from thousands of transactions over years, from being willing to extend credit when others were scared, and from being able to coordinate across borders in a way almost no one else could. Myth amplifies the drama. Reality shows the machinery. By the mid-19th century, the Rothschild name is associated with sovereign debt. Need to build a railway in France? Finance mines in Spain? Fund the British government's share in the Suez Canal? At various times, the Rothschild house is involved. They help structure and underwrite bond issues, convincing wealthy investors to lend money to states and companies in exchange for regular interest payments. In the era before modern stock indexes, their name on a bond issue signals reliability. They are, in a way, early brand managers in finance. The family members themselves become figures of fascination. They are ennobled in some countries. They buy grand houses, they collect art, they fund charities and scientific foundations. They sponsor vineyards, parks, synagogues. They are also, inevitably, targets. Whispers start that they secretly control governments, that they engineer wars for profit, that they pull strings behind the scenes. Some of these stories are just old anxieties about finance. Some are fueled by anti-Semitism. Some come from the natural suspicion that arises when a small, tight knot of people sits at the important crossroads of money. The truth, again, is both more ordinary and more remarkable. They are not puppet masters. They are, however, very good at playing a game most people do not even know is happening. What does it feel like to be part of this machine? We have letters, diaries, scraps. Nathan Rothschild in London is famously blunt and driven. He's said to care less about aristocratic manners and more about the rate on a bond. He speaks rapidly, works long hours, and dies relatively young. James in Paris becomes known for his flair, his salon, his ability to blend into the social fabric of French high society while still running the numbers. They are constantly balancing three things: family loyalty, commercial opportunity, political risk. They lend to monarchies, but also to new regimes after revolutions. They must decide when to cut off a client, when to roll over a loan, when to demand better collateral. If they misjudge, they can lose millions and damage their reputation. If they get it right, they become indispensable. As the 19th century rolls into the 20th, the financial world evolves. New players appear. Stock exchanges grow more sophisticated. New banks arise in the United States and Germany. The scale of industrial projects increases. Railways, mines, telegraphs, canals, then later electricity, networks, all need capital. The Rothschilds are still big, but they are no longer the only major game in town. They adapt by specializing in certain areas: mining, railways, bullion trade. They work with other banks rather than always trying to dominate. The family remains wealthy, influential, but the age of a single clan, quietly underwriting half of European, begins to fade. Later, the trauma of the two world wars, the Holocaust, and nationalization in some countries will hit their business hard. Some branches weaken or close. Others pivot into new lines of work. The surname survives as a symbol of old European finance, threaded through wine labels, philanthropic foundations, and discreet advisory firms. But the specific world in which a family from a ghetto could become the central switchboard for empires is gone. So what did the Rothschild actually do to modern finance? They helped normalize the idea that states could borrow from markets, not just from a handful of local lenders. They turned cross-border payments from a dangerous physical process into a mostly paper-based one. They showed how information, trust and speed could be turned into a durable competitive edge. They proved that a tightly knit partnership with aligned incentives can wield as much power as a big, sprawling public company. And they left behind a template. The networked financial firm with branches in key cities, coordinating quietly while governments and corporations carry on with their visible dramas. But their story is also a European story. Old capitals, monarchs and revolutions, letters and couriers. Across the Atlantic, a different kind of financial power is taking shape. In the United States, railroads are being laid like steel veins. Factories rise, trusts form, panics hit. There is no central bank yet, no Federal Reserve to flood or drain the system. Instead, there are a handful of financiers whose private decisions can calm or crash the markets. One man in particular sits in a dark, wood-paneled library in New York under a glass ceiling and a thick haze of cigar smoke summoned whenever Wall Street is on fire. He does not come from the ghetto. He comes from a family of merchants and bankers already plugged into the Atlantic economy. He collects art, reorganizes railroads, bullies industrialists, and at least once effectively acts as the central bank of the United States before one exists. His name is John Pierpont Morgan. Next time, we will leave the courtyards of Frankfurt and the salons of Paris for the brownstones and boardrooms of early Wall Street. We will watch how a single American banker used his balance sheet and reputation to pull the country through panics, reshape industries, and force the creation of institutions bigger than himself. If the Rothschilds were the family that bankrolled empires across a continent, JP Morgan will show us what happens when one person decides he can bankroll an entire financial system, at least for a while.